Let's do it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, and welcome to, I think, your earliest ever episode of the Battle Hymnal, everyone's favorite film review show about UGA football. I am Nathan J. Lawrence, your one of your co-hosts, and also the co-host of Chapel Bell Curve, the audio sister podcast to this fine program. I just want to say that none of you are ready for the energy I'm about to bring because normally I'm running on fumes when we do this show. I'm joined today, as always, by Graham, our intrepid co-analyst, co-host, and also writer of all things dogs at Dog Sports. Say hello, Graham.
Hello.
And also our intrepid analyst slash producer slash technical wizard, Josh.
I gotta remember to Google what intrepid means at the end of this show. Someone tweet at me and do that. Good morning.
It's an SAT word. Both of you went to college. Come on, get it together. All right, so today we're here to break down the UGA versus Cincy matchup in the Peach Bowl. I think we got a lot of good tape for this. I think we're going to just hit you with a bunch of sort of quick fire plays as ways to talk through what we think about this matchup. We're going to give you some predictions at the end of it, and then we're going to get out of here. So I think Josh has
everyone's favorite play.
Everyone's favorite play that we want to talk about, and that would be the wheel route. So, Josh, what do you have for us on Cincinnati's use of the wheel route?
Well, they have it in their playbook, and the longest completion of the year. I don't have the Army game, but it was a 60-yard touchdown to Army in that game. And here's one you just saw the one. Oh, maybe that was the Army game. And then this is the Memphis, and it's a little of a mod. A wheel route too. I think that's a wide receiver, but they've got it, and we got to stop it.
Yeah,
I feel traumatized.
Yeah, I would say with respect, since he might not have quite the skill talent that Florida has in carving us up with the wheel route, but we've given up to some worse teams. So
well, and it got me looking. It's like how is Ritter's got the wheels on his legs and in the playbook, but I was looking at it. See what I did there. But I looked at it's a short passing attack. Just looking at JT Daniels. 3 games, his yards percentage of air yards is 67% or 67. Yeah, 2/3 of his play. So he's throwing the ball downfield more than. And Desmond Ritter's yards after catch are 55%. So we've got some plays that kind of diagram that how they're doing it, and so and you're right when we were doing the show, air yard passes of 20 yards or more, Ritter was only hitting 38% on target and only a completion percentage of 33%. Now he's got 5 touchdowns and 2 picks in those plays, but we've got some stuff where he exposes folks over the top. But we're gonna have to be ready for if it's not wheel routes, it's gonna be underneath stuff, and certainly you don't get to 9-0 without being creative on those plays. So that's my thought on it.
Yeah, I think. We're going to, look at some Tulsa stuff here for a second. And I think what I noticed in a lot of these from Ritter was just like, he throws a nice ball, but I don't know that like you said, I don't know that he's Kyle Trask in the pocket. I think Stats of War said that he was more, what did he say? Bo Nix outside of the pocket and Kyle Trask inside of it. He throws a really catchable ball. He's not like a broken quarterback. He definitely can throw. And we see here on this like deep route. That's a really nice ball. But I just don't think that he does this at a consistent enough level to really take the top off the defense the way that like Florida could with Trask and Tony and Pitts and all that. He definitely has some wheels though. He kind of reminds me like if Bo Nix was good. That's what he strikes me as. Bo Nix should be playing tight end. Don't at me. I'm still on this crusade. If Bo Nix was black, he would be playing tight end. But yeah,
damn.
Ritter's a real threat in the read option game, right? And he'll scamper a little bit on you. And this is a design just QB draw. He's got wheels. He's probably a little bit like short area, quick, faster than Bo Nix. He's not a stride. He is a strider, but he's got some quickness to him. I don't know.
That tight end Wiley is their number 1 receiver, and he's got under 400 yards, but he leads the team in touchdowns at 5. So they're getting the ball to him, and you can see when they need to make a play, it's going to be Ritter. And I think I highlighted this drive because one of the things I wanted to talk about was here's it as penalty. They're the most like they're 117th in the country in penalties against. So they make a lot of mistakes, and I think that's part of coaching and stuff. And this is just a stall drive. They move down the field, and I think Georgia is they're middle of the pack, But I mean, everyone's middle of the pack unless you're really, really great at penalties and stuff. I think that could be a liability for Cincinnati.
Yeah, I don't think this is the type of game that Cincinnati can afford to give up, 5 yards on 3rd and 1 and still make conversions. As far as Ritter goes, I do think he has like some of that kind of Matt Jones early 2000s, mid 2000s Arkansas energy. Just a really good athlete who is a long strider and deceptively fast, which I'm not saying like we usually say about white guys. I'm saying that the guy is moving away from people a lot quicker than it looks like he is because his strides are so long.
He's got the old AT.
I agree with
problem.
Yeah, I agree with the Knicks in the streets, Trask in the sheets comparison a little bit, but I also just don't think that. The matchup that'll probably determine this game is like Georgia is good at stopping the run. Georgia's probably going to bring guys in. They're gonna have somebody watching Ritter, and what's going to be very interesting is like with Eric Stokes out and DJ Daniel out, and we know that Tyson Campbell is a very good defensive back. Reports are that Tyreek Stevenson is going to move over from star and start at defensive back. If he can hold up, which I think he can just because he's got SEC speed and we're playing Cincinnati, then Georgia should be fine in this game. But if Cincinnati's able to like stretch that field out and hit some long bombs and then open things up for these underneath tight end passes that Josh has been showing us that we know they like to do, then this could be problematic for Georgia.
Look at this play right here. Tell me how we're going to defend this. I mean, it's again 3rd and 8, and he calls his own number. He quit, and they make this hole for him. So who's going to defend this? How are we not going to leave that wide open lane for him?
I mean, we have fast.
So that's not designed.
It's part of it.
But Jordan Davis probably doesn't allow a hole like that to occur in the middle of a line. But
all right, so thanks for being with us again. As Josh was saying, had sort of a technical malfunction there, so let's pop back in here. So one of the things I want to talk about, we talked about Ritter's. Ritter is a good quarterback. He is throwing to some people that have some talent. He's sort of a long strider, but a dude who can throw. In the more general sense, Graham, when you're comparing these two teams, it's difficult because there's no common opponents. I don't have any problem with the Power Six. I don't have any problem with the American, but Cincinnati hasn't played anybody outside of the American this year. What are your thoughts on just comparing these two teams straight up? Because one of the things that we'll see, and we can get into this a little bit more with Josh, but one of the things we'll see in the metrics is that, Cincy looks really good on the metrics compared to Georgia. So how do you sort of like blend those two sides of it?
Yeah, I think it's tough. Like when you have a team like Cincy that is really good and has kind of dominated their conference, of course their metrics are going to look good, right? Like they're going to look up there with Alabama's. And if you look at S&P Plus from Bill Conley, Cincinnati is ranked higher than Notre Dame. I think they're even ranked higher than Ohio State. Like if you went off of that, Cincinnati would be a playoff team. The problem, like you were saying, right, is that it's who they're doing it against, and it's tough. Like I think the easiest comparison for Georgia fans would probably be the 08 Sugar Bowl against Hawaii. And I'm not calling Cincinnati Hawaii. I think they have a lot more strength on the line of scrimmage than those Rainbow Warriors teams did with Colt Brennan and June Jones. But it's tough because Hawaii comes in a game like that. If you look at the metrics, it's like, well, this team has broken every passing offense record for the season. And, like it would be a similar story, right? If Hawaii's going to blow out Georgia if we're going off the numbers in the EPA. So I think that recruiting rankings is a good place to start. And, Cincinnati there, I think that their best ranked class over the last 4 years was maybe somewhere in the 40s, but they've had close classes in the mid 70s as well. So the reality is that the talent level on these two teams it's two worlds apart, right? It's penthouse versus small time college football.
So just per the 24/7 talent composite, which is 24/7 Sports has a list of basically like how talented your entire team is, top to bottom. UGA is currently first in that metric, 93.16 average ranking of all players, a total of 990 points on the team. By comparison, Cincinnati is currently average of 84.39 per player and a total of 600 points on the team. So they are actually not even first in their conference; they're second in their conference behind
Central Florida,
behind Houston, behind Houston. So they have 7 4-stars, 64 3-stars on their team. UGA UGA by comparison has 16 5-stars, 51 4-stars, 18 3-stars. So like you were saying, like this is not. It's not even really. It's not apples to oranges. It's not even really apples to bananas. It's like apples to wrenches or something.
Well,
like in terms of
I've looked at that recruiting metric stuff, and I've made correlations between talent, recruiting talent and on field stuff, and I've tracked it, and it's obviously LSU and USC and Florida State, Clemson, Georgia, all these teams have comparable talent, and then obviously their years don't pan out, and they're anywhere ranked 10 or lower in the playoff rankings and stuff. There's always one team, whether it's TCU in 2014 or 2015, or I think Mississippi State with Dak Prescott had a great year of yards per play and stuff where they weren't. And it's like it matters, but there's always one team that pops up, and this year it's Cincinnati, where they just have an outstanding result, and I think Cincinnati's. Let me bring up this stat here. Is offense? Yeah, you can see 30th in success rates, but it's okay. But explosiveness number 4, yards per play 11th at 6.9, and their net yards per play, which I don't have up here, is like 3rd or 4th. So there's always one of these teams, and it's like, and it's always the storyline is okay. Well, how they're doing it against X schedule, and it's like, so now this is what's a great game about this is that they get a chance at an it seems to me an invested Georgia team. But
and I want to talk about Cincinnati on defense, but like the last thing I do want to say about this is like ultimately I think two things can be true, right? Like I think the playoff committee has done maybe the worst job that the playoff committee has ever done this year. If you look at the top 25 of the playoffs, it's bad. And they have Louisiana behind a team they beat. They have Cincinnati like what is like 11th or something as an undefeated team. And so I think two things could be true. If you're talking about most deserving teams to the playoffs, Cincinnati should be in the playoff. That can be true while at the same time saying like any of those 4 teams would probably beat the shit out of Cincinnati. Because you get get into the best versus most deserving thing. In terms of UGA versus Cincinnati, UGA is not a playoff team this year, so who knows, what that's going to look like. I do want to, before we get too deep into the weeds here, can we talk about Cincinnati on defense real quick? They run a 3-3-5. They have 2 very good corners. I guess, and Graham and Josh, feel free to rejoin with anything else you have. And this is a great play. We see their best, probably the best corner. I think Wyatt is his name.
Wiggins, I think.
Really great in-phase coverage here. My initial thought on UGA on offense is that I'm pretty sure Cincinnati hasn't tried to cover anyone like George Pickens. They might not have even had to cover anyone like Jermaine Burton this year. They put guys on islands a lot. They run the 3-3-5, and they put a guy on an island, and they usually have 1 or 2 stars in the game who play in run support. I don't think that's going to work. Run supporting against Houston or UCF is very different than run supporting against Georgia. And I also just don't think – I actually think, one of the strengths of this team is that they can put dudes on islands. They have good cornerbacks. and then they can just have dudes kind of in a cloud defense on the outside of that. But like, I don't think you can do that against Georgia. Like, I just think George Pickens eats George Pickens eats that. Like, I mean, he just absolutely is going to have a monster game if they try to do that.
So what I think about it is, if Cincinnati comes out in a base 3-3-5, that Georgia is going to like smash the ball down their throats until they're forced to adjust, and then they're going to throw the ball over their heads. And Blue Tarski and I had a little.
I think Cincinnati's defense is better, but if you look at just the body type on those clips, like Cincinnati's defense is a lot of like rangy dudes, not necessarily a lot of weight on them. They run, they're fast, they're rangy, they're long, athletic. They run to the ball and they tackle with really good. I mean, one of Luke Fickell's things is that they have good format. Like if you look at when Luke Fickell last year, when the defense really started getting going with Cincinnati, there was a bunch of pieces about how like Luke Fickell teaches tackling like at a level of like specificness that is just like unsettling, and they tackle to the ground a lot, and so you're going to see a lot of dudes that are a little bit smaller but really fast, really long, and who tackle with like perfect technique. And I think that like that will cause Georgia problems just because the quickness on their defensive line is pretty good, but at the same time, like we saw a play in that cut up. There's a play of Tulsa running power across the formation where they had two pulling offensive linemen, and they just cleaned up Cincinnati. I think perfect technique will sometimes beat like an 80-pound weight differential, but not enough. And like you said, I mean, I really think if you put 3 down linemen against Georgia and you try to put the guys, you're putting your coverage corners on islands, and then you're just having like 180-pound cornerbacks trying to clean up and off in the run game. I don't see that being a recipe for success against UGA. I think that they're quick enough that they're going to cause UGA some problems. I think they might even get a few sacks. Like they're real quick off the line. But
yeah, they're real aggressive. One of the things I want to touch on is that they're super aggressive. They're, like I said, they're most penalty. It's a lot of motion, trying to make sure they get off the line on offense, and then also a lot of defensive offsides. And I think that's Fickell teaching aggressiveness, and you've seen him. Attack, interference on punts. They're getting up in you. It's a super aggressive team and stuff. But I'm showing this UCF play drive because this is late in the game or late in the third quarter, and UCF was able to run the ball. And this is what you're not seeing because it's cut up is tempo. And I'm wondering if that shows up in a game plan that maybe we run some tempo because UCF was running really quick, not allowing substitutions. And got the ball down here to take the lead late in the game in that UCF game, which was right before the championship game, I think. Maybe one game before the last game of the regular season and stuff. You can see that it's like a lot. They were able to move the ball on. Sorry, Graham. Go ahead.
No, you're good. I mean, I think tempo has been a big part of this offense, especially since JT Daniels has come on board. But even at times, just hasn't been at that helm this year. Like Monken likes to go fast and always has to a certain extent. We just haven't seen it as much because Georgia has been like dominating a lot of the games they've been playing in by the time we get early to midway through the third quarter. So it's just like we've been running the ball and sitting on the play clock. But no, I think anything that Georgia can do it's like a starting pitcher in baseball, right? Like Georgia wants to take as many guys and make that pitcher throw as many pitches as they have to. So it's like as however many plays Georgia can make this game, like the more plays that happen in this game, the bigger advantage that is for Georgia. If Cincinnati can sit on the ball and turn this into the type of game where both offenses run like 55 or 60 plays, that's a huge win for them. But if Georgia can get to Cincinnati's backups, especially their backups on the defensive line and the offensive line, it's going to be bad news for Cincinnati just because the backups that Georgia's rolling out, as we know, are 5-star true freshmen and 5-star juniors. Like Channing Tindall was a 5-star linebacker and he doesn't start. You know what I mean? Like these guys come out, they're fresh, and they have the ability to make big impacts in games when they're given the chance. So I agree with you, Josh. I would definitely look for a lot of tempo on Saturday or Friday. It's Friday. Sorry.
I mean, that was a nice pass over the top. And I'm just wondering, is this a good decision? I mean, he's the guys are there to make the play. I don't know. God, that was awful coverage. They could have closed on that so much. I just don't think that play is not going to be available.
He also kind of underthrew that ball. And, like,
yeah.
I don't know that that's a pick against Georgia, but, like, I think there's a guy there at the very least to make a play on that ball. I think we've sort of set our piece on the technical side of this. You know, I want to sort of like talk about what we think this game is going to look like, and then we can make predictions. But before we make like full on predictions, like, what is this game? What do you think the sort of like personality of this game is going to be? Like, how do you think this game is going to like look on the field, pace wise, score wise, sort of flow of the game?
The more and more I think about it, I think Georgia, and if the mindset is what it appears to be, that's focused on this game, a lot of that Georgia dominates. I can see a 34-10 game.
What's the line on this game right now?
It's Georgia's 7 is moved to 7.5. Yeah, I think it was somewhere between 6.5 and 7.5 or whatever. And I think Georgia just gets after Ritter, controls what they want to do on the short stuff, and it puts them in behind the chains, behind schedule, and the only way I think that they can really beat us is if he can play better over the top. You know, we talked about that at the start of the show, that he's not great, you know, downfield of air yards, passes over 20 yards. So I think Georgia can whip them, honestly. I'm predicting 34-10.
Yeah, I think that this is going to be a game that maybe feels a little bit frantic for the first, like, half of a quarter. You know, that, like, I think that Cincinnati is going to come out with a lot of energy, and I could see Ritter maybe throwing a ball or two into traffic, or maybe like a weird special teams play or a turnover or something like that in the early going, which is the type of game that would really have scared me a month or two ago. But with Daniels at the helm, I feel like everything is always kind of calm and chill. So I feel like that will sort of take over, and that Georgia will, you know, start to assert themselves, and there will just sort of be that calmness resonating through everything, where Georgia looks like a veteran team that knows that they have this game. But I expect this game to be chippy, honestly. Watching some of the clips of Cincinnati, like, I don't want to say they play dirty, but they definitely play like to the whistle and sometimes through the whistle. And there's a little bit of a chip to them, and that chip is only going to be magnified going against Georgia with the recruiting rankings that the guys on Georgia's roster have and all that. So I think we could see, like, you know, a couple personal fouls in the early going or something like that. Even maybe, you know, a little pushing and shoving and all that. But I think that, like, that if Cincinnati does that, like, maybe that helps fire them up, but I can guarantee it'll definitely fire Georgia up.
Well, it's funny you talk about that, because here's where they interfere with the punt. It's muffed. And there's offsetting penalties, you know, and it's like, you can see this is what I'm talking about, aggressiveness and stuff. And he's gonna, you know, he just takes a shot at him, and then right after this, there's a scrum on the field, and there's offsetting penalties. I mean, like, there's a lot, and I think it's a little bit of aggressiveness, but I think that yeah, I think you're right. I think that's Fickle getting his good guys fired up, because I think that he knows that he's got to fire up his guys to play strong and hard and fast. And I really think that, just like you're saying, and there's a chippiness to it, because I think Georgia's sick of hearing about Cincinnati too, and Cincinnati is sick of being not being discounted as a good team.
I sort of feel like that there are two sort of like Kirby Smart axioms. Like, one of the things we talk about that we talked about in Chapel Booker for a long time is just Kirby Smart teams tend to kick ass in the third quarter by pretty much any metric. Like, Kirby Smart on net success rate, net explosiveness, net EPA, whatever you want, they usually win the third quarter by pretty much any metric. I think this is probably a game that feels kind of close in the first half. Like, you know, UGA may be up 3 or 4. Maybe Cincinnati has the lead for a minute, and it's just sort of a battle back and forth, and we kind of see the best version of Cincinnati. But I kind of feel like if you're Cincinnati, and to some extent you're relying on you've got to care more. You can't make any mistakes. You got to have a low margin game where UGA has the fewest number of opportunities to change the game. Pissing UGA off is not smart.
Yeah.
Because if there's a part of UGA that is uninterested in this game, and then you hit them late, or you hit JT Daniels on a busted play, or there's a play called dead and you hit JT Daniels, I just kind of feel like that UGA might come out and drop 21 in the third quarter. I really do. I think this is going to be a game that feels pretty close in the first half, and UGA runs away. I don't know that it's necessarily going to be a 35-point win or whatever, but I do feel at the end of the day, the number one axiom of this show is that metrics matter. But the number one axiom of Chapel Bell from the beginning is that the talented team usually wins. Not always, but usually. And UGA is the more talented team. That doesn't mean they can't lose, but I just think if UGA starts to care, and there are reasons, like you said, based on Cincinnati's personality, that they might at some point start to care, that this game probably kind of turns into a little, if not a blowout, then at least a pretty comfortable win. This feels more 35-21 or something. I also think, I also think technically what might happen is we might see a South Carolina kind of thing where it's UJ just runs the shit out of the ball, but when JT Daniels throws, he's deadly. And he just, JT Daniels might throw the ball 20 times and still have 200, 300 yards. Because I think it's going to be one of those games where.
Well, in that Twitter thread you were talking about that we had with Tony and the Blutarski and stuff, and we talked about, Tony asked us how to allow for the JT Daniels over Stetson Bennett, and I was like, well, that's kind of baked into the line and stuff, but just looking at those EPAs that we showed earlier in the season, it's it's easy to see the numbers that JT is twice as good a quarterback in producing and efficiency than the quarterbacks we had previous. So I think you're right. I think it's this team is fired up, and I just think that this is a much more talented team. And to that point, I'll let you jump in here in a sec. But going back to your point, the more talented team wins. It's they don't do well on punt returns. They don't do well on special teams. That's because that's where the depth of talent comes in. Georgia's got guys in 4 and 5 stars playing gunners and blockers and returning punts and on kickoff duty and stuff. And you just don't have that luxury when you're making sure that your playmakers are on the field for the offense. They can't go out and cover a punt. They can't go try to block a punt like Zeus White has done this year. So I think that those things matter in a game like this, that you're going to have to win in all 3 phases of the game, or at least, be really good in all 3 and dominate in one. I think Georgia is going to just out-talent them.
Yeah, and I think the thing I would also say is that this feels like a game where the middle kind of 10 minutes of the game, the last 5 minutes of the first half and the first 5 minutes of the second half, it could
the middle
be
8, right?
The middle 8, right? Yeah, coaches always talk about it, but it's it could be a 3-point game or a 7-point game, and then all of a sudden, boom, you turn around and Georgia goes back to back and they get a touchdown and a field goal or 2 touchdowns or something like that, and it's a 17-point game or a 21-point game. So yeah. I think you just gotta trust. If you're a Georgia fan, I understand cause for concern just because we've played Boise in the Georgia Dome back in the day, right? And we West Virginia in the Sugar Bowl back in 2005. I was at that game, and it was the birth of the zone read option kind of spread offense, and it totally caught us by surprise. And by the time Georgia woke up, it was too late. But there's guys on Georgia's team that were on their team for that Texas Sugar Bowl a few years ago. And I also think that still we've talked about for a month or two now, these games are more the start of 2021 than they are the end of 2020. So I think that Georgia will be focused, and I think if they're focused, it'll be fine.
I think you're right. This has been kind of a shit show for me technically.
Predictions. Hold on, I want score predictions.
I'm 34-10. What's yours?
What do you got, Graham?
I am going I'm going 40. So since JT Daniels has joined Georgia's offense, they have averaged over 41 points a game and 500 yards in all 3 games. So I am going 44. No, that's 3 field goals. That's too much. I'm going 40. I'm going 45 to 17. I think it's an ass kicking. I think Georgia could score 56 or 63 if they want to.
Nice. I like it. I think
Kamar.
Oh, go ahead. I got one more thing to add after your prediction.
Oh, no, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think special teams are going to play a big part. I think Camarda is going to have a great game. And he liked one of our tweets the other day. So he and Lewis Seen are friends of the show. So, yeah, I think Camarda is going to show out. I think he's going to give him problems with his good kicks. And I think we're going to get a critical special teams turnover early in the game off of Camarda's awesome punting.
To me, I think this is a game that goes into the half like 14-24 or something, or 14-21, Georgia. But I really think that this game might end 42-21. I think Georgia has shown defensively that they can solve teams, and they can even solve decent teams if you don't have the. I mean, look. If you look at what I think a really good blueprint for this, we talked about like Ritter as Bo Nix, but if you look at the Auburn game, I think that's actually kind of the UGA blueprint because is Auburn's offensive line better than, or is Cincy's offensive line better than UGA's?
No,
I mean, by pretty rate, he's probably not. Maybe they're a little faster, but I mean, you saw in that game against Auburn, UGA figured out that Auburn could not block their defensive line.
Yeah.
And I think especially if Jordan Davis plays, which it seems like he's going to,
Yeah, he is.
If Jordan Davis plays and he's anywhere close to 100%, we've said all year that Jordan Davis is the key to this defense. And I think if he plays and UJ starts getting traction with like rushing 3, and then we realize, oh, if we rush 4, they can't block it, I think you can solve this team.
Yeah.
Like I really do. And I think, UJ has proven defensively that if you don't have a dude on the perimeter who really threatens them one-on-one, they can solve your offense. And if UJ solves your offense, they're going to do what they've done in every other game. They're just going to sit on you until you run out of air, right? And that might not just be running the ball. It might be JT Daniels throwed it deep a couple of times. Like I just really think this is a game where Cincy has a shot in this game if UGA plays a bad game, right? If UGA has a lot of mistakes and, JT Daniels isn't there and the defense looks uninterested, definitely Cincy can win this game. Absolutely. But like every minute that UGA cares about this game is another opportunity for something bad to happen for Cincy. And if they care coming in minute 1, I really do think we could be looking at like, hey, look, Carson Beck got some playing time in the fourth quarter. Like I think we might get there. So I'm saying 40.
I would love that. Yeah, and I think also like just to add one more thought before we go is to me where the breakdown happens for Cincinnati, I feel like is our defensive line. You alluded to it, but it's like getting pressure with 3 and 4 guys. Like if that happens, it's good night for Cincinnati. And with Aziz in that game, and the way that not just Jordan Davis has played all year, but the way that Jalen Carter has played since the South Carolina game, like just blowing up mesh points and throwing bodies around. It could be the type of game. I mean, it's not going to be on the scale of 2008 Sugar Bowl versus Hawaii, where like Colt Brennan literally almost dies on the field, because Ritter's elusive and he'll be tough to sack even when we do get to the quarterback. But like I think that these guys have never seen outside linebackers and inside linebackers that run 4.5s, and he's going to try to go to the edge. Yeah, and get to the corner the first couple times in the game, and he's going to realize that it's not there, and it'll change things a lot for that offense.
Auburn's a good comp. The Auburn game's a good comp. If we play like that, and I think that's a great call, Nathan. I think we win. I think we're all in agreement.
I mean, I just think the core of the Auburn game, and people and the guys at 24/7 and Rivals talked about it, was UGA figured out that Auburn's offensive linemen were too slow to block Aziz and Adam Anderson and Jermaine Johnson. I just don't know how Cincinnati is different. Now, they might not be too slow, but they sure as hell are going to be too small. And I just don't. I just think this is a game where I think we're going to be pissed off because this is a UGA game. In the first half, we're going to be pissed off. I think it's close. Kirby Smart goes in there, cooks something up. We come back out, and we just take the game over because that's what UGA has done in the third quarter.
Well, and yeah, I mean, and we were talking a moment ago about how do you kind of account for two teams that have played vastly different schedules, and PFF, it's a reference point, right? Like it's not gospel, it's not Bible, but looking at the rankings that they do, which I do think they do a pretty good job of trying to kind of balance out teams based on their competition. With JT Daniels as quarterback, they now have Georgia ranked as their number 8 offense in all of college football. Cincinnati is ranked number 91 for their offense. Now their defense is ranked number 3. Their defense is good; it's legit. But yeah, it's just hard to fathom Cincinnati like without a defensive score or a special team score or a bitload of turnovers, scoring more than like 24 points in this game, even under the best of circumstances. So,
yeah. All right, guys. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you liked what you heard here today, you should give us all a follow on Twitter. I'm at Nathan J. Lawrence, Graham is at Dog Out West, and Josh is at Dog_stats. Yeah, you can also follow our 2 accounts for our shows at Chapel Bell Curve and at the Battle Hymnal. If you really loved what you were seeing here today, you can join our Patreon, patreon.com/Chapel Bell Curve. For just a couple of bucks a month, you can support the show and get access to a really cool community, which we're doing a lot of cool stuff. And we think that you'll enjoy it. And a lot of your donation will go to a lot of your Patreon membership will go to a good cause as well. So we will catch you in, I guess, Atlanta or Athens or Durango, Colorado on the flip. But until then, go Dogs.
Go Dogs.
Go Dogs. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to everyone. Yeah, if we don't see you.